Finley to throw. Over the middle, intercepted. Wolford again. Wolford the other way at the 30, the 40. Wolford to midfield. Miles Wolford with the pick. The Heels on the doorstep of an enormous victory. Williams is the running back next to Howe. Play action. Howe will now lob it down the near side. Newsom with a man all over him. Pins the ball against the back of the defender and brings it in. Heels can get a first down at the 3. Now, one fake to the right. Now he's going to run to the left. Now left the 5. Takes the shot. Pin mowing off the chains for the touchdown. Sam Howe showing the toughness for 6. Cardinals down 4, 35-31. May has the shotgun snap. Pressure coming. Rolls to the right. Throws to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Antoine Green! 16 seconds to go. No flag. Snapping it off the 8-yard line. May pulls it, tries to roll it apart. Oh, now he's going to throw it and score! Throws it to Payson in the end zone for the touchdown. They have thrown it late with the left hand. Was walking out on the run and threw it left-handed. Nard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio, he's going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Heel Tough Blog podcast. It's your host, Anthony Pagnotti, here with you guys, as always, coming at you on a Monday night. And you would think, hey, just a few days before the start of fall camp, you guys have to be moving on to your latest edition of the position previews for this 2026 season. Well, that was originally the plan coming into this morning. And then around 8 o'clock this morning, that's when plans changed because we have some news regarding the front office for Carolina. It is news that at this point, I'm not shocked by anything that comes out with this program. And, now Carolina, the focus just 4 days before the start of camp shifts off the field once again, as opposed to being on the field, trying to, figure out whether or not this team is going to be successful this upcoming season and pouring all of our support into the guys that are going to be taking the field for Carolina in a little over a month from now in the season opener in Dublin against the TCU Horned Frogs. And so we got to go through that today. We're going to break it down from all different angles. And at this point, we just have to ask the question, are we just tired of this, man? I mean, is this really just, maybe the final straw, if there are any straws that were left? Where do we stand going into this season on where this regime is at? And the reason for that is Michael Lombardi. It was announced earlier this morning per a release from the school that was sent out to a lot of media members earlier this morning. I was not one of them that received it, so I don't know whether or not it came directly from the school or from the football program itself. I would believe that it came from the school, judging off of some of the information that has been released. But they announced that he has been placed on administrative leave. They also, in the release that was sent out earlier this morning, they said, as is standard procedure with personal matters, leadership, staff, and student athletes are prohibited from addressing this topic further and has no reflections on the merits of whatever the claims are. And so this means that, when they take the field on, in a couple of days for practice for the first time in the fall, and then when you have the meetings, I think they actually are going to do the same thing that they did in the spring, where they're going to meet with the media before they take the practice field. So before they even take the practice field, you'll have Bill Belichick who's up there. You'll have some student athletes maybe that get the chance to speak. They will not be able to speak on this matter. So you should not expect any sort of acknowledgement of this from Bill Belichick. That's not something you can really hold against him. But, this is certainly something that you definitely don't want to see at any point during the offseason, but especially just a few days before the start of camp. The decision did not come from the athletic department or football program, as we told you earlier, but rather UNC Vice Chancellor for Communications and Marketing, Dean Stoyer. There were later reports that came out, as first reported by Pete Thamel of ESPN and then picked up by a few different outlets. This stems from an HR complaint filed by a former UNC front office member. At this time, the investigation is still pending, but according to Andrew Jones and a couple of people inside the Tar Heel community in terms of the reporters, this is not something that just popped up recently, and it's something that the university has been looking into for a while, and now they are choosing to act on. All of that thrown at you here on a Monday evening, Josh Marlowe. What's your reaction to the latest headache that is around Tar Heel football off the field?
Well, what's frustrating about this one, I think, individually is it's the latest, but things had been quiet. Like, that had been one of the real big talking points this offseason, was that there wasn't as much going on around the program. And we can complain about that as fans, where we don't have the access to the team that we love and care about. But even last year, the things that were being reported and we were being talking about on the podcast weren't football related. They were Jordan Hudson related. And you get to the week of camp. Camp opens on Thursday. And I do think as we've gotten closer and closer to this season, I know I can speak for myself, optimism may be starting to grow. And belief starting to kind of set in, where you're maybe more optimistic about what this season can be. And then you get this, and it's just a reminder that it's always something with this program. Like, there's never a dull moment. There's never we never lack for content. The frustrating thing is that it's usually not the type of content we want to be talking about.
No.
This 15 years to the day that Butch Davis was fired at ACC kickoff. And not that those two things are intertwined, but it just kind of just shows you that when it gets late into July, when you're getting ready for the football season, that's when you should get nervous as a Carolina football fan. That something bad's going to happen. And not surprised by this at all. If anything, probably more surprised it took this long to have something with Lombardi be reported and then get some sort of, suspension, paid leave, no matter what it is. Because if you're online, if you're on social media, like when I tell you for the immediate hour after this news broke, it was everybody in the football world basically celebrating the fact that this is going to cost him his job when it's all said and done. Like, there's a 99.9% chance that he's done being the GM of UNC football. And the entire football community was celebrating it because everyone just loads this guy. And once again, we're back being the laughing stock of it's college football. But today, with the slow news day, it was the sports world. One of the biggest stories in sports. And it's not positive. This isn't 33rd NFL team bleep like they talked about when we hired him and when we hired Bill Belichick. So when I was sitting at work, got the notification on my phone, and I literally said, "Are you bleeping kidding me? Like, are you or like it's here we go again? Like we're trying to get to the season. We're trying to get fans excited about the season. And we got to talk about a GM being paid on administrative leave, an HR complaint, multiple people basically alluding to they know what the situation is, and it's not good. We have to see ultimately what comes out of this, but it's just a program, man, that in our lifetime just cannot seem to get out of its own way.
Well, I mean, look, this is next level. This is the stuff that you're dealing with off the field with this regime is so much worse than what you dealt with Butch Davis. I mean, that was an era where, look, man, you could say whatever you want about everything that was going on at Carolina. At the same time, the thing that ultimately got him fired, which was the paying of players, that was happening at every school. It was just Carolina wasn't smart enough. They didn't, unfortunately, they had a moment from Marvin Austin that he probably regrets to this day, where he let it be known on social media that he was being paid by Carolina. This is a whole nother level where it just doesn't stop. Every time that you think, this has to be the end of it, right? And now we can just focus on football. For a guy that was so built on in New England, just keep the main thing. Focus on football. Don't allow outside things to infiltrate what we're doing here in New England. Even when he was in some of his other stops, that he was a no-nonsense kind of guy. And now that's all that we're dealing with. Every time you look, it's nonsense. Every time that you look, it's another storyline that, look, is not just a bad look for Carolina. As you said, you are the laughing stock of college football. It is a joke what is going on in Chapel Hill. And, I mean, look, man, with the Michael Lombardi stuff, that doesn't shock me in the slightest. We heard some things last year around the time when Bill Belichick, it was being sort of gallivanted about that he could be fired after the game against Cal, or no, it was the week before the game against Cal. Could be fired in that bye week. We heard plenty of things coming out about players, parents that were saying, how rude and disrespectful Michael Lombardi is, and that he treats a lot of people inside the program terribly. That's not shocking in the slightest. We've heard that from a lot of people that have been around him from his time in the NFL, even from people that were around him when he was in the media. He is not a nice guy. And, some people thought that would translate over that, hey, a no-nonsense kind of guy that, comes in and just takes over the front office role for Carolina. This was a bad hire from the beginning. We all knew that. And it was a hire that never should have happened. If you were looking for a general manager, you should have gone out and hired someone that, no, you didn't necessarily have a relationship with, a strong relationship with, but maybe, someone that Stephen Belichick knew, somebody that he had a relationship with, someone that knew the landscape of college football. From that moment, we should have known that this was probably doomed to fail. And then you get the reports last year, whether or not they're true, we'll have to, still figure out later on down the line. I mean, the fact that he actually went over to Saudi Arabia and tried to raise money for Carolina, that should have been hint number 2, that this probably was never going to work out for Carolina. I know some people say, hey, just fire him and pivot off of this move. First of all, I'm going to tell you, there is no way that Bill Belichick is not going to fight to try to keep Michael Lombardi employed. I don't care how serious the allegation is. I am almost certain that since that is Bill Belichick's guy, he will do everything in his power to keep him in place and keep him running the day-to-day operations of Carolina football, which, by the way, if you look at it, not great. The results are not great. He put together a trash roster last year, absolute trash, a team that, at certain times during the year, especially early on, didn't look like they should be competing on the same field as some lower-end Power 4 programs. I mean, call it what it is, man. Central Florida wasn't a good football team last year. So you're not seeing the results on the field. This offseason, things haven't gotten much better. I mean, yeah, this roster, as we talked about, is going to be improved from last year. That's a low bar, man. That's a pretty low bar that you're starting from. So, yeah, just about anything is going to be better than last year. They didn't pull in a great portal class this year, and you're relying on freshmen to be able to come in and play immediately for you. Now, you did a good job in that area, but at the same time, I still don't know just how talented this roster is coming into this year. So Michael Lombardi is one of those guys that you're asking, because people, I had someone that said to me today, well, this is similar to what Michigan's going through right now. There is one huge difference when it comes to this situation and what is going on with the Michigan program. Yeah, both of them are facing some really tough allegations, potentially, depending on what this ultimately shapes up to be for Michael Lombardi. Michigan's coming off winning a national championship. So everything that they did was successful. It actually led to success on the field. We're going through all of this hell, this complete embarrassment of your football program, just for your football program to do absolutely nothing on the field. I'm sick and tired of it. And I said today, if they wanted to pull the plug right here, if they wanted to fire Bill Belichick and just say, we're done with this, we're bringing in Bobby Petrino as the interim coach, we're going to elevate him to that role, and we're just going to roll and see what ends up happening. I couldn't fight it at this point. I'm just over it.
Yeah, that would be, I think, a shocking turn of events. Wouldn't shock me, though. Wouldn't surprise me, because at this point, nothing does surprise me. You're just waiting for the next bad thing to happen. And it's better when the bad things are disappointing, frustrating losses, like to a Georgia Tech team when you're 9-1 at home, to a Virginia team when you're 6-0 at home. Those were the disappointments that we experienced under Mac Brown. Those were the days where it was really hard to come back on here and talk about, man, that's a real tough loss. How are we going to bounce back from that? For a guy that was no nonsense, that was his mantra in New England. It was football, football, football. How much has the focus been on football since we hired him? I mean, go back to, it was like a damn near coronation when we hired him, and that press conference where there was Bill Belichick holding a North Carolina football helmet, saying all the right things and saying all the things we heard him say for 20 years in New England, where he built the greatest modern dynasty in the history of the NFL. And you think this is now coming here, and we're going to have the sleeping giant is finally going to awaken. And we're going to have this renaissance of success like you've seen, Oregon. That's always been, another sleeping giant. What that program has been for the majority of our lifetime. Maybe some other programs too that have fit on the right coach, the right recruiting cycle. And that just hasn't been the case. I don't know if this is endearing, but it's honest. I'll put up with the circus if there's wins. Like if Carolina's winning, winning cures all. It is the greatest deodorant there is in sports. Look at some of the greatest championship teams, and you find out just how chaotic they were off the field. But as long as they showed up at the time they were there to perform, you put up with it. The great Bill Parcells, as long as LT's on the bus, I don't give a damn. Like, we're going to go play. Well, that's how we felt about Belichick. He's going to bring this no nonsense. It's going to be football, football, football. And we're finally going to win and compete and do all the things that we think this program is capable of. And that's what I always come back to when I get frustrated when this program has days like today. If I didn't think it was possible, I would tell you. I wouldn't believe it was possible. I think it's possible to build a really consistent top 12, top 15 program on a year in, year out basis. There's enough right now money. I think there's enough interest from a younger fan base that's a lot more passionate about college football than, like I say, my dad was. You look at the recruiting base. Like, look at all the things the job has to offer. So I believe that it's possible. This isn't Wake Forest. This isn't one of these one-off programs where you might catch lightning in a bottle. No, I believe we can be this. And I thought this was going to be the ushering into, we're going to be a big-time football program. And in 2030, we're going to break away and go join the SEC. And when we join the big, bad SEC, we're going to compete with those guys as well. And all we've talked about for the majority of his tenure is his girlfriend, his absence, where he's missed, it feels like, pretty important events and weekends where he just doesn't seem to be visible. And now it's his general manager, who, by the way, is the highest paid GM in all college football and has nothing to show for it. And let's also remember, he wasn't accomplished in the NFL either. Like, all of his rings are faux pas. They're riding on the coattails of Belichick. He didn't accomplish anything in the National Football League. And he's been given this title, and you could see the arrogance when he was at the first ever game. There's just an arrogance about him that's led us to where we are today, where this was always going to happen. There was going to come a point in time where Lombardi was going to get in trouble, because that's just who he is. He's not a good person. And it's really frustrating.
Yeah, I mean,
and to me, it just dampens the mood, as we're like, this week you're 4 days away from this team being on the practice field. We're not that far away from doing a game preview for an opener against TCU, and this is going to be something that's going to hang over this program set for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and that doesn't even get into the other news that was reported by multiple outlets today. Pablo Torre was the first one to have it. Reports that the UNC football program, this is key, is being investigated by the College Football Sports Commission, the entity that handles compliance and enforcement of NCAA and NIL rules. Well, then The Athletic, later in the night, this according to Brendan Marks and Ralph Russo, who do a great job for them, they reported that UNC has, quote, been approached separately by the CSC about a potential investigation. So we're going to need to figure out what exactly is going on with that. We need more information before we can tell you what exactly is happening with that situation. But look, man, not only are you being investigated for HR violations, which you said, look, we could put up with certain stuff if there was winning on the field. The one thing you can't put up with is HR violations. You can't just be a piece of bleep, and we're just going to forgive you for that. No, if you treat people like crap, if you harass people or sexually harass people or whatever it is, then yeah, you deserve to be gone. And so I think that's the other thing with this thing is that, we're hearing, people are saying whatever this is not good. So it's not just something light. It's not something involving this report that came out later in the day. I don't think it's something involving that. Just based off of what we're being told by some people, it seems to be a lot more severe than that. And so, yeah, that's something we're absolutely not putting up with. Get him the hell out of here. I think I speak for everyone when I say we want him out of the program. We don't want him anywhere near the program. I'm pretty much at that spot with Bill Belichick too, but I understand if you're not there. The problem is that what could get a lot more people there is if they actually do an investigation and find out that Carolina is going to be punished for violations involving NIL or any of that kind of stuff. How in this era of college football can you not do things the right way? There are literally no one keeping guidelines straight. We talked about, the College Sports Commission, they have some power, but it really isn't that much. Look at everything that's going on in the sport of college football right now. And you're telling me you couldn't stay in between the lines to be able to put together a team that, by the way, went 4-8. This team won nothing. That doesn't make sense.
I don't mean to disparage the current players on the roster. What rules did you break to get? Like, I would get it if we had 15 5-stars sitting on the roster and the CSC said, you know what? We might want to look into that. This roster is no doubt better than a year ago. But we've talked about as we've gone through our position previews, there's still a talent issue at key positions. There's still a depth issue at key positions. What the hell did you do wrong?
They're probably, if we are being honest with ourselves, they are still a bottom third team in terms of talent on the roster in the ACC. And
like
you cheated for that?
If Quinn Ewers or, one of these big time like quarterbacks was on campus, all right, probably wouldn't, and part of it too is, and I just know this from like listening to like guys like Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish talk about the CSC's involvement. Like some of this stuff might be like routine based where they're just trying to do their P's and Q's, like just trying to be some sort of governing body because there isn't one. But for the most part, just about everything that gets sent to them gets passed with flying colors. As what's like the $600 minimum thing is what it has to do for it to even go through the CSC. And so I'm just trying to figure out like who's the player that maybe you bent the rules to get here, because that player doesn't stand out unless you were doing that to retain some certain guys. And so and Pablo just really loved firing that tweet off. Because he said the whole thing with Jordan and Belichick and Lombardi since they got into Chapel Hill. So he had that wicked smile that he has when he got to send that tweet off. But we couldn't even get through one bad thing this morning before like 4 hours later, here we go again.
Yep.
And so that's what it is. It is Groundhog Day with this program. It feels like far too often where it's, yep, here we go. And I'm not saying I want to see Belichick fired. Like I'd like to see him play this thing out, but I'm also not going to argue against it, right? Like, I think, we had Andrew Jones on the station a week ago, and we asked him, outside of, winning, what's the one way Belichick could save his job in a losing season? And he answered very, very quickly, don't be an embarrassment to the university. That was last week. What do you think happened today? They embarrassed themselves, not for the first time, not for the second time, not even for the third time. This is another embarrassment for a program that went all in with these two dudes to get them over the hump and try to compete at the level that we're starving to compete at.
Well, the other thing is, you look back at the Jordan stuff, and you could get, you feel however you want to feel about that. Her involvement, I mean, yeah, she does appear to have some sort of role. I don't know what it necessarily is, but there's some sort of role that she appears to have with the football program. Still, for the most part, it wasn't affecting your day-to-day operations. This is directly affecting your day-to-day operations. So, I mean, from that standpoint, I mean, you got to have what has to happen now. And like I said earlier, I'm not sure that it's going to happen, is you have to have Belichick distance himself from this and say, hey, we're moving on from Mike. We're going to find somebody else to take over that role. And whether that's you promote someone from within, I don't know if that really solves any issues in terms of helping the things run smoother, or if it's just going to continue to be a disaster. I think at this point, everything would tell us no matter what, because Belichick is the head of the snake, everything is going to continue to be a disaster until this is over. I just want to get to a point, man, where I don't have to open my social media in the off season on any random day and just have to be completely embarrassed to say that I am a Tar Heel football fan, that, we do podcasts about the Tar Heels. Like I'm tired of doing these podcasts. I'm over it. Can we focus on the product that's on the field? I get it. The product on the field is not where we want it to be, but that was one thing that even when you go back to the days of John Bunning, When you go back to the days of Larry Fedora, some of the struggles that he had, at least those off seasons were still focused on the team that was actually on the field. It never seems to be about what's on the field. And now who knows what you're entering into? Who knows what stems from this and how deep this honestly goes? Because there could be other guys that end up getting caught because of this. This isn't the first guy that's been placed on administrative leave. This is the second guy. Remember, Armand Hawkins was on administrative leave during the middle of last year. Why? Because he couldn't follow the rules of the NCAA. Don't invite players' families onto the sideline. How difficult is that? And you can't even get that done? You shouldn't have a job in college sports. You're a moron. Like, I mean, it's serious. It's not that difficult. And yet everything for this group seems to be incredibly, incredibly difficult. And as a Tar Heel fan, I'm just over it, man. Like, that's all I'm saying. Am I pushing for them to fire their head coach 4 days before the start of camp? No, I am not. But if they decided to make the move, I'm with you. Can you argue against it? No. You would just say, yeah, that's about right. It makes sense that you want to flush this experiment. So, I mean, look, as you said, and I put it here on the grid, we're not going to spend too much more time on this here tonight, but I put it on the grid. Does this put more pressure on the team to succeed this season? Because as you said, the only way that you're going to be able to mask this is if you find a way to win games this year. And as we have discussed throughout this offseason, and we'll discuss it once again when we get to the start of the season, this schedule does not lend to you being that successful. Even if you're better than you were last year, even if there is more talent on this roster, unless some guys drastically overperform what we expect them to do coming into this season, you're probably not looking at 6 wins. And things like this make it hard for me not to say, hey, you got to at least make a bowl game for you to be able to be here in 2027.
I don't think it puts any more pressure on the players. I think it just puts pressure on this coaching staff. Like for Belichick, you probably can't have a mishap. Like, you probably can't have, a situation where a coach, does something wrong. You have a off the field incident. He probably can't survive if he has another divided locker room. And we've been told by the people that cover the program, kind of were told by Belichick when he spoke at AC Kickoff about just the culture that wasn't there, that it was a locker room that didn't come together. He probably cannot survive that. We don't need to put any more pressure on the kids. They're already feeling enough as college athletes at a major university that are now being compensated. There's already enough pressure that they got to deal with from fan base, from social media. I don't want to put any more pressure on them. It just probably gives Belichick, he doesn't have any more like foul balls. Like, he's got a full count if he swings and misses, he's done. That's probably where he is. I think if they go 4-8, but they're a competitive 4-8, they probably think they bring him back. If it's 4-8, but it looks very similar to what it looked like at different times last year, and you're still the chaotic program off the field, then yeah, I would imagine that they'll pull the plug. Just because at some point the people that are funding him were going to quit funding him, and the people that are funding what the football program has committed to, they're not funding this. So I don't think it puts any more pressure on the players, but Belichick, who was already under the microscope, it's even more so after what happened today.
Yeah, because as you said, you're going to start losing some of those boosters. It seems like there's a good chance you've already lost some of those people, and you kind of needed to regain them. And maybe with some of the stuff that you had done previously in this offseason in terms of keeping things quiet, making the focus mainly on the guys that are on the field, maybe you were helping yourself. Today was a big step back. And now I think, yes, does put a little bit more pressure on him to show that this program is moving in the right direction. You've got to give a reason for people to support you through everything that is going on. Because, yeah, I mean, you said it, this locker room, they're closer than they were last year. But how is this going to affect the locker room? We have no idea. A few days before the start of camp, all of a sudden, the guy that was a big part of getting you to campus ends up getting placed on administrative leave. So what does that do in the locker room? Does that create a divide again this year in the locker room of people that support Lombardi and people that dislike Lombardi? We could see he's very polarizing when it comes to the UNC fan base. Most people absolutely hate him, including former players. Marquise Williams basically did a victory lap on social media when the news was released earlier today. So, I mean, yeah, if he's treating former players like that, guys that aren't even around him in a day-to-day capacity, I can only imagine some of the stuff that he's doing to players that are there every day that aren't performing up to the standard that, he has set for himself and everything like that, even though, as you mentioned, one of the biggest overall failures when it comes to the NFL. I mean, I think Al Davis put it great in a quote that he had back in 2008, where he said, quote, Mike Lombardi has been fired from every job he's ever had. Every job. He can't get a job. Last year, he was fired from a job he was working for nothing. He was fired from Denver, but he does have ability. He does have some ability. Well, we're still looking for that ability here in Chapel Hill because he has the
ability to get hired and the ability to get fired.
Yeah. And
look, a lot of people in this industry get hired to get fired. Like there's that old adage in coaching that, there aren't many guys that get to ride off into the sunset. But for someone that's got the accolades that Michael Lombardi has, shouldn't have been fired and removed from his position as many times as possible. And, dude, you got to credit someone like Pat McAfee, who I think sees the brilliance to whatever extent that is that exists in Michael Lombardi and has tried to make him likable, has tried to make him personable all those years on the Pat McAfee show and failed at that. And I'm not the biggest McAfee guy, but if even McAfee's like, hey, we got to get this SOB out of here, then there's got to be something wrong with you. So
I could take or leave McAfee, but it's a good point, man. It's a good point when you can't even make him likable. I think that just tells you the type of human that he is. And again, there were all the warning signs when Carolina made this hire. You saw people all around football say, this is not the guy that you want. I know this is who Bill Belichick thinks is going to allow them to be successful. He thinks that his background in NFL front offices is going to work. One thing that's still true, even with the involvement of NIL and rev share and all that, is that, yes, the money is important. So are the relationships. It's still a very important part of college athletics. And that's something that I just don't think Mike Lombardi really understands. The thing is that when it comes to this regime, my ultimate question is, how much longer can you put up with this before this job takes a hit and gets severely damaged by what this group has done? Because you can see already the reputation of Tar Heel football is taking a downturn under these guys. So you actually pulled in a clip here from Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman talking on their podcast. Here's what they had to say about the job, how it would look after Bill Belichick leaves.
If this blows up and Belichick's out and they got to hire somebody new next year, one, it may be the best job of the cycle, depending on what happens elsewhere in the country. But two, what is the thing that hangs over everything else? What did we talk about on Friday in the mailbag? What's the thing that every school is thinking about in the next 5-10 years?
I'm trying to remember what we talked about in the mailbag.
The Super League.
Oh, yeah, duh.
North Carolina, despite being in the ACC, doesn't need to worry about anything.
Yeah.
They will be part of whatever's next. If it's the Big Ten and the SEC still lording over everything, when the realignment crap hits the fan, North Carolina is fine. Like the Big Ten and the SEC will be fighting over them.
Yeah.
So this job is a good job.
Mm-hmm.
Throw out your sleeping giant jokes. It's a good job. The person holding it is not trying very hard right now.
Truly one of the most underrated places in the world to live, probably. Like, Chapel Hill is beautiful.
If this blows up and Belichick's out.
Okay, so, yeah, I mean, that's comforting to hear from national people that, hey, it's still going to be a big job. I don't think you have to worry about them, being affected in terms of trying to get into a super league or whatever the next round of conference realignment looks like. I think Carolina's brand is so big that they will find a way around this. My thing is that you do wonder with what is going on here currently, how deep of a hole in terms of, punishment by the CSC or whatever else is going on, and just the overall reputation of the job, how far down the line does this get if you keep Bill Belichick here? That's why, to me, if you feel like he's endangering that, if you feel like he's an embarrassment to this program at the end of the year, you've got to move on.
For all the shortcomings this program has experienced, the one thing it hasn't failed to do is it hasn't failed to attract coaches. You look at who was set to be the head coach when Mac Brown left the first time. They had a handshake agreement with Frank Beamer, who ultimately returned to Blacksburg and went on to, perennially underachieve with the Hokies program. You were able to bring Butch Davis to your program. I think people forget that when Larry Fedora got hired away from Southern Miss, that Southern Miss team won double-digit games and won a conference championship. And he was a really highly thought of offensive-minded coach and felt like the right guy for the job at the time. You brought Mac Brown back out of retirement. And he was able to, put a lot of energy. And in my opinion, re-engage the fan base to a point even where it is now. I think you still got to credit Mac for that. And then you're able to get Bill Belichick. They're going to be able to attract good coaches. What I worry about, what I question is more from the university side, is the financial commitment still going to be there? Because that's all that ultimately matters. As long as Carolina is willing to foot the bill and make money and have resources available, they're going to get a good coach. And they're going to get a coach that can elevate the program. We know Curt Cignetti had Mac Brown step down when he should have stepped down. More than likely would be in Chapel Hill and not Bloomington. Would have taken the UNC job over the Indiana job. Carolina didn't come open. Indiana did, and look at the success that he's been able to experience his first 2 years in Bloomington. So that to me is the big question, because what they brought up there was really key. We might be a football school with not a lot of history and tradition. We might be a football school in the ACC. We are a valued brand in the college landscape, in the college athletics ecosystem. That powder blue resonates. And so we know 2030 is a pretty big mark. There's going to be some sort of realignment that comes in that year. More than likely, we believe that it'll be the death nail to the ACC. And I do believe we will probably break away into this Super League we talk so much about in the offseason. Carolina will be there. They'll be one of those teams no matter how big that league is. So that should comfort you. That this job will be able to attract a good head coach. And it's going to be a job that's going to be in the upper echelon of college football, because they're not going to be left behind like some other schools in the state, like a Wake Forest, like maybe a Duke.
Yeah, I mean, this is the sad part, though, is that this upcoming season, now with all that came out today, it's almost just like, can we fast forward through this season? And I was with you. I was starting to get to the point where there was a little bit of excitement building. Maybe there still is for some of the guys on the field, but I'm at the point right now where I want this to be over and just find your next head coach. It's as you said, as long as you're willing to put in the money. And I mean, I think there is still going to be an appetite to do that. I hope that most Tar Heel fans will have a similar mindset, that the problem isn't investing in football and it didn't work out. The problem was investing in Bill Belichick, investing in the wrong guy. You need to invest in someone that is embedded in the world of college football, knows the ins and outs of college football, and most importantly, cares about actually moving this program forward. Because as we sit here today, I still ask that question. And that is really sad to be asking as we get ready to start camp for the second year. I have to ask, does the head coach of North Carolina football actually care about this program and about winning on the field? I don't know if that's the case, or if he's just looking for jobs for his buddies and for his family, just to keep them moving along and keep himself close to the sport of football. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast. Guys, make sure you head over to the website, HeelToughBlog.com. Read more about Michael Lombardi and everything that's going on with him over there. We got an article up with the latest stuff that we know about his situation. As we get more on this possible investigation that could be going on by the College Sports Commission. If we get any more news on that, we'll, of course, pass that along to you guys so that you can know the latest. And we'll have you covered here on the podcast side of things. So the best thing to do is make sure that if you're listening tonight, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. That will get you not only our podcast here that we do on the Heel Tough Blog side, Heel Tough Blog podcast side of things that covers football, but we'll also get you in for any editions of the Four Corners podcast that you guys can find as well. So make sure that you're doing that. Any other news that comes out around the program, we will have you covered. Of course, we're still going to be getting you ready. Yes, tonight was the focus was on this Lombardi situation and everything that's going on around that. But we're going to move forward, focus back on the team here in 2026 coming up shortly. Not sure if we'll end up doing it tomorrow or Wednesday night, but we're going to do the defensive backs for this season. We'll have that one, special teams, and then that'll be it. We'll be done with the position preview. So make sure you guys go back and check out those previous editions of the podcast. Also, check out all the articles on the website. The best reason to do that is I've got my projected depth charts in there for each and every position group. So make sure you go and check that out for us, HeelToughBlog.com. Any news that comes out around the basketball program, we'll have you covered over there on the website as well. Of course, you did have the recent addition to the staff that Carolina made, so make sure you go back and read about that. And any other news that comes out around the program, still waiting on some things to be confirmed about the eligibility statuses of Alexandra Samardurov and Sayon Keita. When we get any news on that front, we will, of course, bring that to you guys as well. As I mentioned, make sure you subscribe to that YouTube page. It would really help us out. We're pushing to try to get to 1,000 before the start of the season. It's up to you guys to help us get there. And so, yeah, if we can accomplish that goal, we would greatly appreciate you guys for helping us out with that. And then social medias, check us out at Heel Tough Blog on both Twitter and Facebook. That is a direct stream to all of our content and our content exclusively. So that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast. Want to thank Josh for hosting with me. Want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.